Good evening and welcome back to Heart in Hand. This is Heart in Hand Extra, your second free show of the week. Joining me for tonight's, I was going to say post-mortem, but we're not going to get anywhere near as deep into it, thankfully, as that. Joining me tonight is David. How you doing?
I'm all right, as well as you could be after witnessing a loved one suffer a horrific attack.
Absolutely. And Martin, the one that we always wheel out when there is a horrific attack we need to talk about.
Yeah, there's no wonder I get this reputation. It is a joy to be with you both, maybe not in these circumstances, but we will try to make sense of the week that was.
Yes, we are not, you'll be thankful, doing a play-by-play of all of the goals that were scored because we'd be here all week, and for everyone's sanity, I don't think we need to do that. I have had a few people DMing me, asking me if I can do a tactical breakdown of the show over on Patreon. The answer is very much no. I can't, and I will not, ever. But yeah, let's dig into it. So David, obviously, noises coming out pre-match from the manager were that we were going to go and get in their faces, we're going to press, we were going to have a go similar to what we had done in previous matches. And if we want to be even slightly positive about it, you can't argue against what happened in the first half in that sense, can you?
No, you can't. It was a very good performance. I thought we deserved to go in at the break level. We should have gone in at the break up, but we gave away a dreadful goal from our point of view from a set piece. But the manager had got what he wanted, which is the players not to be playing the ball short passes around the batter box, because as you correctly identified, Liverpool are a very good pressing team. Liverpool attack when they don't have the ball. You know, that's the thing about the very top level sides, and they're very good at it. And he knew that our passing in those and our movement wasn't good enough to be able to withstand it. So we did go long and pick up second ball. Every time we shied away from that, and we went back to trying that. Look at every Liverpool goal. If you're a masochist and want to put yourself through it, there is a Rangers error, there is a Rangers passing error in at least 6 of them, and even the corner that the first goal comes from a loose pass, because we simply didn't have the ability to play that way, and we had to play a more direct fashion. The concern that you had was, will we be able to keep playing at that tempo for the full 90? The answer was obviously not. But even so, what happened in the last 25 minutes or so was just completely unacceptable. There's a bit of an online debate, and I do feel it's a little bit like who got the nicest deck chair on the Titanic. But still, I think there's a kind of online debate about people saying, well, what is chucking it? You know, what does giving up mean?
Yeah.
For me, it is a term that gets bandied about whenever a team plays badly. People say they chucked it. I don't agree with that. They didn't chuck it, I think, against Napoli, for example. Lost 3-0, but that was just the fact that Napoli were better and we went down to 10 men. St Mirren, we beat 4-0. They didn't chuck it. It was just we were better than them. What chucking it means is your head goes, you stop doing the basics, you stop chucking yourself into tackles, you stop doing blocks because we've lost anyway, and then it just piles up and gets humiliating. And that's exactly what happened on Wednesday night. Let's be clear about this. The expectation was not unfairly set by the fans before the game. The fans didn't think, we are absolutely categorically going to go out and play well. Even in that second half, had Liverpool ran out and won 3-1, 4-1 even, I don't think the reaction would be that bad. They had to go the team, to make it a disaster. They did, and they managed it. And that, I think, is why the level of anger, added to the fact I've never seen a Rangers team concede 7 goals. Certainly wouldn't have ever expected to see it at Ibrox. And of course, there's going to be a vicious reaction. And I get, Liverpool are a good side and all the rest of it. It's just a simple fact. Rangers FC shouldn't be losing 7 goals to anybody, no matter how good they are. And the manner in which we capitulated, and that is the word for me, was just disgraceful, in all honesty.
I agree with all of what David said there, essentially, Martin, but I'm just wondering about context. Now, devil's advocate, you've got people saying this is the Champions League. What do you expect? Well, I don't expect to lose 7-1 to anyone, regardless of who they are. financial disparity, absolutely. But to expect to have such a heavy defeat against a team of that quality doesn't really ring true when you compare the financial gap that exists between us and Liverpool to, say, us and Motherwell, or us and St Mirren. We don't beat them 7-1 every time we play. So I get you're always going to have very black and white scenarios, and the truth is always in the middle there. But in terms of that, it's the Champions League and it's such a big step up, we have to expect these beatings. I don't think we should ever be expecting two of the beatings that we've had in this game, more in this league. Sorry, more in terms of the manner of them rather than the actual number of goals that are going in.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disassociate the manner and the result when it's so extreme. You tend not to lose 7-1 in a tight, well-fought contest. You know what I mean? It probably has to be a bit of a poor show. Should we expect to? No. Would that happen 9 times out of 10? Probably not. But it does happen against. It does happen against Motherwell. It does happen against Hamilton.
It probably doesn't happen if Goldson doesn't go off, but Goldson does go off, and it still shouldn't happen.
Yeah, but it happens in the Champions League. It does happen in the Champions League. Big results like that happen because the disparity is so huge. Happened to Celtic not that long ago, twice, I think, with Paris Saint-Germain. The levels are there that make this a possibility. So it is there. Just as we can knock 8 past Hamilton or absolutely toast someone at home. It's not going to happen every week, but it can happen, and it does happen. The nature of losing 5 goals in 21 minutes is chucking it. It's the rapidity of that. It's the cluster collapse that is the worry. It was the cluster collapse in Amsterdam. It was now 2 cluster collapses in the space of 6, 7, 8 months, or whatever it is, at Parkhead. That suggests, whether Goldson's in the pitch or not, this Rangers team have a habit of losing their mind, losing that collective will to stem the bleed. Gio's making a triple substitution, or trying to make a triple substitution at 3-1 down. The front 3 replace it. He couldn't make that before it was 4. Now, it kind of rings. It reminded me of Ian Ferguson's conversation with Dick Advocaat not long after the 5-1 defeat at Parkhead in '98, when Advocaat similarly tried to chase the game, and Fergie was furious that, look, we're going to lose, but it's about stemming the flow. It's about just digging in and keeping this respectable, and we don't go there and do that. So there was a wee bit of that. There's probably a wee bit of it in it at the outset, and I was really interested in your thoughts, Adam. I know people wanted us to have a go. People wanted to show a lot more bravery and spirit than we showed at Anfield. I think that was kind of inevitable. I fully expected Rangers to do that. Personally, I wanted to see that just on the ball, off the ball, the pace at which we played, the pace at which we pressed, our bravery in the tackle, our bravery, with the ball at our feet. I don't think that necessarily needed a change of shape. I think 3 at the back, I didn't have an issue with keeping that. Tillman out in the right, obviously I wouldn't have tried again, but you're still playing against a team vastly out of our league. And I thought that the starting pistol was fired with a touch naivety, as exciting as it was to go ahead, and as pleasing as it was to see Rangers, not was it all out attack. We kind of picked our moments the way that we kind of did against Braga and Leipzig at Ibrox. But even then, we didn't recover. We didn't adjust on the bench, and we didn't adjust with the pros on the pitch when it clearly started to become apparent that the tide was turning and the wave was fucking massive. And I think that's what we're taking away, because we were all just... That wave crashed over every single one of us. 5 goals in 21 minutes is symptomatic of something far more worrying, and we're going to talk about the manager and the future of the season, I'm sure, in a minute. It isn't about Wednesday night.
No. On that point about shape, no, I think you're right. I think we always say we get hung up on shape. It's more about intent. So in theory, yes, you can have that at Ibrox, and if you're playing Tillman instead of Sakala, and you're putting King in instead of, I don't know, a Ryan Jack or whatever, you're still going to have the same intent from all of the other players, and you're still going to be able to set yourselves up. In theory, the fullbacks will be higher than they were. So it's an intent thing in terms of your game plan rather than shape 100%. So yeah, I don't think it would have made a huge amount of difference if we'd done that, and we might have retained a bit of defensive solidity. But I'm interested in the thoughts on this because, David, everyone goes back to, and I've seen it quite a lot, I do it myself, Steven Gerrard wouldn't have lost that game in that manner, in terms of losing so many goals. Famously, I don't know how many games was it, 150 odds, and never lost by 3 goals, and only lost by 2 on 4 or 5 occasions, I think it was. That mentality has always, 8 parts of Rangers' mentality has always been in question over this last 4-5 year spell. However, there was never a kind of throwing in of the towel. When you think of those defeats that we've had, even if you discount Napoli, as we said, Amsterdam, twice at Parkhead, and then the game on Wednesday night, those type of collapses of cluster goals never happened. And I think it's maybe to do with kind of defensive structure, if you like. We changed so much. We changed from a 4, we changed to a 5. We have enforced changes in terms of partnerships, etc. When the going is tough, like Martin said, and you have to fall back on, right, let's just do the basics and get things going. I don't think we've got the same solid feel to us, defensive mid centre halves back to the keeper, than we did maybe a couple of years ago. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe we then get ourselves into a tough moment in a game and we don't have that same tactical cohesion, the same drilling of the defence, the same repetition, the same comfort with the team, that then these type of cluster goals can just happen, and we can't really explain it because we're switching about so much and we're now so flexible with what we do. We've almost lacked that kind of comfort blanket, if you like.
Yeah, we've lacked that, if you like, that routine, as you mentioned there, because we're switching, and it has its advantages. Being flexible is a good thing. Here's the other point, though, Adam. Gerrard didn't have to go into it with a 5-year-older Ryan Jack, with a 5-year-older Connor Goldson, with a 5-year-older James Tavernier, over and above that. Tav is shit out of form at the moment, with a 38-year-old Stephen Davis. That is an issue. Our midfield is a huge issue because we've kicked the can down the road so often that we've run out of road now. There is nowhere to go. We have a midfield that is old and tired, and it looks old and tired, and you can't be surprised when an effervescent midfield that is much better than it anyway passes round it, and that it runs out of steam after 55, 60 minutes, which is exactly what happened, because we should have added quality in there several times, haven't. Would it have stemmed the flow? Just have it, but maybe not. But even so, you were asking guys to go to the well, and we're going to have to do it again. We're going to have to keep doing it at least until the January transfer window, because, as I say, we've just got by so long. But Ryan Jack isn't the same player he was in 2019. It's a fact. Stephen Davis isn't the same player he was in 2020. That's what happens. Unfortunately, hamster all of us. That's why I've got no hair. Age catches up with us all, and miles on the clock catches up with you as well, and that is certainly an issue for our midfield. There's a lot of water ran under their bridges, to mix my metaphor. So yeah, I think that was a factor as well, but there is also a mentality issue. The manager described it as their heads were gone when that wave that Martin talked about started to wash over them, and it was because they stopped doing basics. They started being confused. Mo Salah is one hell of a footballer, but that was, you can't say what a great hat trick. I mean, from his point of view, he did well, but he won't have an easier time of it because there was just nothing there. By the end up, there was just nothing there. People stopped tracking runs. People stopped making blocks. People stopped following the ball. Now, whether or not that is they just their heads were spinning. It was mentality, or whether or not there was just nothing in the tank. I don't know. It's probably a combo. Very rarely is it as black and white as one thing. It's generally a combination of those factors. But these are the issues, and we, looked very much at the end like a team who had, I'll say it again, who had given up. Now, the counter to that, and one I've made in the past when people have said, "Oh, they just gave up," is that what you think at half time they're in there going, right, we want to lose 7-1. No, it's not we want to lose 7-1. It's we don't have enough desire to prevent us. It's almost like when you're playing a game on the PC or on the console, and you make a mistake and you know you can't win on that particular level, so you just go back to the start and go, well, this one's done. That's kind of what they did. As Martin mentioned there in his Ian Ferguson example, that's when you have to say, I've got to treat this like it's 1-1, and be chucking into everything, because otherwise it's going to get embarrassing. Even though there's no chance we're going to win, we still have to make sure that we fight for everything, or otherwise it's going to be 7-1. And I go back to my point at the start. Had they been overrun a bit in the second half and lost 3 or 4-1, there's nowhere near the level of condemnation, nowhere near the level of inquest that's happening. They had to go some to make it a catastrophic defeat, and they did that by, ironically, not going enough. I get that you're saying the game was gone. I absolutely get that. And as fans, we know that. As soon as the third goes in, we know that. The problem is, as a player, you have to say, right, to be professional, lads, with the whole of the season that stretches in front of us, we have got to, as I say, treat this like it's 1-1 and we're grimly holding on for a point. We've got to fight for everything. And I don't think enough of them did. And, this is a problem. People will pick out Barisic, and it's a conundrum, for example, with Barisic, because he has been playing decently. He's been fine all season. I don't think any doubt about that. But here's the problem with Barisic. You know that's coming, because we've seen it repeatedly. That's just who he is, that there will be days and games like that where you get that from him. And he could be good on Sunday, and he could be good for the next 4 weeks. It'll happen again. It'll happen in Naples. It'll happen at Parkhead. That's what he does. That's who he is. We know it. We can't pretend this is a shock to us. And same way, he's been good for the last 5 weeks. That's all right if we're going to go, okay, we accept then that this is going to happen. And therefore, we can't complain when it does, because that's who he is. I don't think that we can. And that's why I think that, again, it's another one of these issues where you go, we know this, yet we don't fix it. And therefore, it happens. And I think that that's been the case with several areas of the pitch where, we're getting by. And that sort of does it. And there is an attitude sometimes, I think, with the squad of, that'll do. Well, no, it won't bloody do, because when you are aiming to get by as often as we do, that's fine if you manage it. If you fall short of getting by, you're in a seriously bad place. And we witnessed, I think, a rather brutal demonstration of what that can be on Wednesday night. These are the kind of defeats that you can't just shrug off. You can't, as a player, or even as a fan, even as the most realistic fan in the whole world, you can't just say, well, it was Liverpool, because in your heart, you're a Rangers fan and you can't be losing 7-1. You just can't do that. You can't do it without huge consequences. And the consequences of this, the manager's not going to be sacked. If anyone's hanging on waiting for an announcement, it's not going to come this week. The players that played there will continue to play. They have to, given the injuries that we seem to pick up on an almost hourly basis. But what it does is it breaks any bond between you and the supporters, and that means that when you need them, when you need the supporters to have just a belief, I mentioned about faith, and I'll talk about it more when we come to the manager, it isn't there. And that is a problem. And you mentioned there that Gerrard side, there was a faith in him and that team, which is why he survived 2 collapses after Christmas. I mean, realistically, if we were being totally honest, he should have been out in his arse just before COVID. But he wasn't, because we thought, no, we can, we have, rightly or wrongly, belief in him. Defeats like last night, coming on the heels of 2-4-0s at Parkhead, coming on the heels of Amsterdam. Fans just think, I'm not going to put my trust in you guys because you let me down.
Just one thing on the cluster thing, Adam, and it's the most damning thing that Van Bronckhorst, I think, has to deal with. Teams that suffer from those clusters of goals, very, very short space of time, 2 or 3 goals that they obviously just take a game away from them, usually managed by ideologues. It's happened to Pep on more than one occasion, way back famously in that 94 European Cup final to Cruyff. It's the kind of inflexible Puritans, and they have a team that don't know how to, they don't have a plan B, so they don't know how to respond. But Gio's the anti-ideologue. He's Mr. Flexibility and maybe a wee bit more robust and kind of different, he approaches different teams in different ways and that kind of thing. It shouldn't really happen to those kind of managers.
So and we've got the only negative part of the ideologue's tactical setup, but none of the good bits. Fantastic. We're still not going to go through the game, so don't worry about that. But Martyn, I want to get your take on a couple of things. Again, something you mentioned earlier on. It's really 2 games, isn't it? It's really up to the third goal goes in, I guess, and then what happened afterwards. And I completely agree with everything that has been said in terms of what happened afterwards. But with that in mind, you mentioned those substitutions. They were a bit strange. I thought probably a bit strange at 3-1, if I'm being honest. In those 66 minute, Nunez's his goal happens, and then we wait until the 76th minute for the players to come on. They were on the touchline for a couple of minutes. I don't know when. Certainly when the goal went in, the fourth goal went in, they were on the touchline. But it was said to me maybe one eye on Sunday, but you don't replace three attackers with 3 attackers when you're losing 4-1 or even 3-1. I don't think, for me, again, I like to what David's point was earlier on, there comes a point where you shut up shop. So I'm very much aware that people moan when Van Bronckhorst is negative, and then maybe we're moaning if he's been kind of too positive. But at 4-1, even 3-1, you're not getting anything out of this game. Surely the point is, let's look and see who needs to come off, and if it's possible at all, can we bring on another couple of players that are maybe going to do a bit more work behind the ball in this situation? I realise it's rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic, but you never know how that kind of could have went. We might have been able to stem that a little bit.
Well, ideally, yeah. I mean, Rangers manager makes 3 attacking substitutions in a friendly when we are out of sight and it's, we've got a big game coming up midweek or whatever, and just resting some players, or when we're in a bit of trouble, perhaps domestically, and he does want to just kind of go for broke. It's a game that we should be winning, and maybe it's we're behind the 8 ball, it's 0-0 or whatever. In no circumstance do you do that in the kind of situation we were in on Wednesday. And the surprising thing is, 6 months, 8 months before, that's not a Giovanni Van Bronckhorst substitution, I don't think. And possibly a sign that pressure's taking its toll, that again, he's aware of the outside demands to have a goal when you're a, featherweight in the ring with an absolutely fit middleweight. And he's showing signs of having his head scrambled, because that's not a normal thing for him to do. So there's maybe some evidence of second guessing and a lot of doubt, which is not a good sign at all from the guy who's supposedly leading the footballing operations and having that final say and yeah. So that was odd at the time, and it's just become more worrying, I guess, the more we've ruminated on it.
And I guess we need to contextualise that with the only 4 players left on the bench. The outfield is Adam Devine, James Sands, Tillman and Yilmaz. But, I mean, there's things you can do in there. You could Barisic into the back 5, Sands coming in to sit in front, Devine to sit in front of Tavernier, Tillman to come in and sit in the middle and just give us another body, maybe not defensively, but just another body that maybe a Matondo or a Scott Wright aren't going to do. So rearranging deck tiers on the Titanic stuff, fair enough, but I thought it was worthy of mention. David, last thing on the game itself before we go on and talk about future, etc. appreciate the financial chasm, 100%. Appreciate we've got injuries. Appreciate what the team did in the first half. Appreciate how it collapsed. Appreciate that Liverpool are a fantastic pressing team, etc. But some of the mistakes for those first three goals in particular are pretty unforced errors. Tavernier's right in the middle of the park, inexcusable. You can't do that. And then same for the corner coming over. Barisic acting like a 15-year-old, going and running up and trying to get the ball off Harvey Elliott and completely leaving the left-hand sides ripped open for the second goal. And then obviously McGregor just kicking the ball straight out into the middle of the park for the third goal. They aren't forced errors for me. They're unforced errors that we have decided to do. You could say it's wrapped up in the pressure of the game. They might press us, they might do this. They're a high-quality team, but they were three pretty big errors in the game. Not anywhere near suggesting we would have went on to win the game, but three of them for the first three goals for Liverpool, we really can't afford to be doing anything like that at this level.
No, to get anything against Liverpool, we had to be pretty much as close to perfect as we can be. But these are quality issues, Adam, and lesser players make more mistakes than good players. That's a fact. You're never going to get a situation. People can tear their hair out about this. It will happen again because that's the level that our players are at. It will very occasionally happen to Liverpool. I've seen Alisson kick the ball straight out to a forward, but it happens far less often because he's a much better goalkeeper in terms of the ball at his feet than Alan McGregor. With McGregor, look, that's who. He can't kick the ball. He never has been able to kick the ball. So we can't really be hugely surprised that in a system that involves him kicking the ball a lot, that there's percentage suggests that there's going to be some errors in it, and clearly there were. Barisic that was a combination of things. He was too safe repeatedly in the first half, which he has been a lot, and the crowd got on him. And when they got on him, that affected him. And then in the second half, he makes a decision that he doesn't really want to make by goal, but he thinks, I better do this because I want to be on the front foot. I don't want them getting on my back for passing the ball. But I'm not blaming the crowd, by the way. It's him, because he is far too often he turns down a pass that he could make. I'm not saying that he needs to do it all the time. And again, it's about picking when to do it. A better player would say, yeah, I do want to be on the front foot, but I'm not going charging up there because there's nobody behind me. That's what the manager means a little bit by your head going, and that's what happened to him. And Tav does this. Tav is having a dreadful season. Let's be quite upfront about that. I don't think he's fully fit. I think he is playing through an injury. I think everybody can see that, which is very brave. But he's struggling. He's struggling very badly, and he gave the ball away a lot. I mean, I'm struggling to pick out a game where Tav's played well this season. Genuinely, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. He's been fine in a few of them, but he certainly hasn't been anywhere near the level that we're at. And I do, put an asterisk next to that because I think he is trying to play through an injury. But these are quality issues, Adam. The higher that you go, and that's why the comparison when people make about, well, we should be beating Motherwell and St Mirren, etc. But it isn't quite as valid because our players are not as good as the Liverpool players, right? I mean, that's the issue here. So yeah, our players are better than the St Mirren players, but the level again goes up to significantly more. These are among the best in the world, right? So what you have to do then is be careful. You can't make errors, firstly with your feet, but secondly mostly with your mind. And our players did that, and then compounded it because once they started making a few that you've mentioned there, they started making a lot. And if you look at goals sort of 4 to 7, there's 4 or 5 Rangers mistakes in each one, because at that stage now everybody their thought process has gone out the window completely. So yeah, look, I like to think that we're all reasonable here on Heart and Hand, and I think most people would agree that we tend to be, but it just keeps coming back to the fact if you're a Rangers team that loses 7 goals to anybody, you will get criticised. If you're a Rangers team that loses 7 goals, whereas you've pointed out you played a big part in it, then you're gonna get done. Because this was not a game where Rangers got done by 1 or 2 mistakes. That can happen. the St Mirren manager at the weekend was bemoaning the fact that 3 of our goals stemmed from mistakes from their players. It's when you're making 30, 40 mistakes in a game, which is exactly what we did in that second half. I accept our players will make mistakes, by the way. I go back again, it's a quality issue. But you can't make as many, you can't make them as rapidly, and you can't make them all in the same move. And that's what Rangers did. And they didn't do that last year in the Europa again. There is a jump. People talk about Dortmund and Leipzig. There is a big jump from Dortmund, Leipzig to Liverpool, Man City, Real Madrid. That's just a fact. That's why these teams are not going to be at the business end of the Champions League. But it's the principle of the thing. It's still not making as many mistakes as that, and having the confidence in yourself to do that. This Rangers team, we spoke about it after Anfield, this Rangers team did not believe for a heartbeat that it could get a result at Anfield, and the game panned out that way. It did believe it could do something at home right up until the second goal went in, and then almost, the really frustrating thing for me is at 2-1 they all went, I knew that was going to happen, and they basically then allowed that feeling, that lack of confidence, that lack of belief to overwhelm them, and you were up against a side who ruthlessly took advantage. By the way, though, Jurgen Klopp said afterwards in the press conference, Martin and I were at it, he said, look, I'm delighted, but I'd have been delighted if we'd won this game 2-1. Well, why did you send on Salah, Thiago and Jota? That's cheating. That's just grow up, Jurgen Klopp.
A big idiot.
I know. 3-1 you should have told them, right, lads? No, I'm only kidding. We handed a team who needed a confidence boost because things aren't going great for them domestically. We handed them a confidence boost and they ruthlessly took it. But we were absolutely involved in that, and we should have been able to keep the score down. On the substitutions, by the way, just as a wee add-on point, I think it goes back exactly to what you said, Martin, that Dutch thing of, right, we'll go and chase it. Whereas I think, a big club, we tend to go, no, don't get humiliated, the game's gone, and we're a wee bit more realistic about it. But I think he also kind of felt he had to. It was a bad mistake.
It'd be nice if he could chase the game against Dundee United at home rather than that situation. But yes, anyway, on to League Matters. Martin, where does this leave us? I think David mentioned earlier in the show. I think personally that the board will disassociate this European campaign with the facts in terms of investment that's come in terms of where the domestic season is, which, given the result the other week, is bordering on absolutely fine. Certainly nine games, 7 wins, a draw down to 9 men, and then obviously an absolute horror show at Parkhead. But a loss at Parkhead, if you take away that 4-0 part of it, a loss at Parkhead isn't entirely unexpected ever. Where do you think it leaves us? Because I don't think we are good enough in terms of the players that we have, in terms of the style that we have. I don't think we're good enough to go on and comfortably win the league. If we did, I think it would need a massive uptick in tactical cohesion, possibly some players coming in, more likely Celtic falling off a little bit for it to happen. But I also don't think it's going to get bad enough that we're going to say, right, I think he needs to go and he needs to go now. So quite a lot of people, I think, feel quite in a sort of state of apathy, if you like, or what's going to happen. Some want him out immediately because they know that's going to happen. Some are willing to be a little bit more hopeful about it. Where do you lie on that? Where does it sort of leave us? Can we disengage from the European results? The team certainly have done in the past when we've saved our best moments for Europe and then came back to the drudgery of Scotland and not. Can we flip it around?
Well, that very much depends on Gio's ability to compartmentalise this result. We saw a decent effort at it at the weekend because Anfield was hardly a walk in the park for us either, even though the scoreline was a hell of a lot more respectable. The 90 minutes were not, and we were able to shake that off quite quickly. This is obviously a far different challenge. The scoreline is sensational. It's away from home. Just when we looked like having some kind of stable, defensive cohesion, they're both seemingly injured and unavailable for the weekend. We'll also have to wait and see about Ben Davies, but that's just so typical of Rangers, certainly Rangers at this moment in time. So there's a lot to deal with, and just to put this in a box and say, well, we're not playing Liverpool again at the weekend, lads, and you kind of treat that accordingly. Whether he's able to do that or not, I don't know. He looked, understandably, shell-shocked on Wednesday night, close up. He wasn't able to really answer some of the questions that were coming his way.
I don't think he could think clearly at that point.
No, I don't think.
I think anyone, reading too much into it, and I know it's difficult not to after a defeat. That was a guy that was suffering, and I don't think his brain was fully taking it in at that point.
I mean, my position and the board's position may be different. I always think there are 3 levels to this, Adam, in terms of a managerial future. The only question, for all the noise and stats and what about this, what about that, and there's only one question that's ever important to a board of directors, to a fan, to players. Isn't necessarily about the past, although that's what can support your answer. But it's, do you have faith and confidence that this guy can deliver you to your objectives? The objective clearly for Rangers, the League Championship. That's all that matters. The only question that matters. And if you've seen enough to give you that confidence, then great. The problem, and it's why Arsene Wenger probably stayed at Arsenal far too long, is that the past was clung on to far too long. But that's it. So I think there are 3 levels. You're either completely confident and happy, or you have concerns and you would be looking maybe at what are the other options, because it's still part of the conversation when you're maybe thinking about firing a manager. Can we replace with better? And then the third stage, which is, don't care, for the love of God, he has to go. Now, I'm not at 3, but I would suggest I'm at 2. I'd be interested to see realistically what we could do, because I have concerns about his ability with this group of players to get through, and I know you hate this, but get through some of the more mental challenges that Scottish football brings, and that's going to come to us just because of the way the fixtures are in the winter when we come back for the World Cup. Not in the near future. Sunday could be a wee bit awkward because of the situation, but we have a good run up to that World Cup. I just, because of these clusters and because of the inability to turn those draws into wins away from home, the tendency to concede late, I'm pretty right. Someone will correct me, I'm sure, if I'm wrong. I think Connor Golson's goal in the first day of the season in August 2019 is about the last time Rangers have scored a winner in injury time. We don't do that. We certainly don't do what Celtic did on Saturday in a million years. So there's something I think lacking. Just in Wednesday was a horrific and extreme example of what I'm talking about, where there's just this weakness at key moments, and you need that to go over the line. So I personally would have huge concerns about that ability, unless it's really handed to us with a Celtic meltdown, and it's just, who's the least worst over the course of a season. And to be honest, Adam, I'd take that at this minute in time just to get my hands back in that trophy, but we'll see. I don't think the board will be remotely near where my head's at. They will look at what he's done, what he's brought in terms of prize money and whatever else. And if you look at the table, which is only ever a snapshot, does not tell the whole story and nuance and trends, whatever, and say we're only 2 points behind. Going into a run of games, and them having a run of games, which could conceivably, and it's nowhere near outside the realms of reality, that we could be enjoying the World Cup with Rangers top of the table. That's perfectly feasible. But that doesn't tell the story of what's to come around that corner.
I think, Adam, that On Martin's point there about the 3 stages, I completely agree with that. I'd also place myself in column 2. But I think you have to remember that the board will come at this from a position of how can we justify keeping him, not how can we justify sacking him. They don't want to sack him.
Yep.
So it would need to get to a pretty bad situation before that would happen. For the reasons that Martin said, incidentally, that he did get us the Champions League, he did the Europa League run, etc. The Scottish Cup. They will use that because that's what you do. You look for reasons. Similarly, people who want him sacked will go, yeah, but 6 points, Leeds collapse. You build your case from the available evidence, and the board will be coming at it from I want to keep him, so what evidence have I got? And there is enough, by the way. There is, people might not agree with that, but you can justify either case, which is probably why I'm in the middle at the moment. It's again, Martin touched on it. I mentioned it earlier in the week, and no apologies for repeating myself. It's the faith thing. A manager needs to engender faith so that when the waters get choppy, you have some ballast. And that doesn't have to be a logical thing, because it's about how do you feel about the manager. Gerrard had it because we were all a bit dazzled by, me the worst for it, but we were all a bit dazzled. Well, maybe you, Adam. We were all a bit dazzled by his level of stardom, but that kept him. That was there when he struggled. Walter had it through his presence and who he was, that when things got bad. And let's not rewrite history, by the way. Even in that second spell, there were people weekly chanting for Walter to go. Oh, the football's rubbish. Remember that? So let's not rewrite history. This always exists. But Walter, in the main, with the support, because he was Walter and he had that presence and assurance, it didn't get that bad. Advocate should have been sacked 2000, 2001, but there wasn't really the calls for it up until it became untenable the following season. And obviously, Souness had it. McLeish didn't have it. McLeish won 5 trophies in a row, but Rangers fans didn't fancy him right from the appointment. They didn't really fancy him. So when he did well, they were prepared to go, oh, well, it's working well. Yeah, he's doing really well. Then when it went badly, they were... and again, people say, well, that's not true. He had that bad season, the season before Helicopter Sunday. No, there were a lot of people shouting for him to be given his jotters then. If you don't have the faith that the manager can turn it round, and it does often come... Gerrard's gone through an exact... or a very similar situation right now at Villa. The fans didn't particularly want him or weren't excited about him when he arrived. They were, okay, yeah, I see it, yeah, fair enough. That, when you don't have that excitement, it's kind of like a relationship. You've got to have the attraction buzz at the start because it will wear off, and then all the other things come in. We didn't really have that with Gio. We had the more, cool, yeah, Gio, that works, yeah. And then it means that when things don't go well, you don't have that sort of just deep-rooted, inexplicable, just faith just coming from the centre of your soul saying, I think you will do this. And Gerrard survived a couple of times because of that, when things were going pretty badly. The worry for me, and I think it's for everybody, is we kind of know what happens. The Gerrard thing is a bit of a fairy tale, but that's why it's referred to as a bit of a fairy tale, this amazing story of a turnaround. Most times what happens in football, and not just at Rangers, at all football, is that it gradually gets a bit worse and then you have to sack him. And I think that's the feeling. And the people who are saying, get rid of him now, are saying, let's be proactive on something that we're going to have to do anyway at some point. Yeah. And they might well be right on that. I can't, and that's why, as I say, I can't turn around and say, no, he must stay. He's absolutely the man for the job. He's going to stay right now. Let's put that in context. He is going to. So this is not a debate about whether he will. This is a chat about whether he should. My fear is that, yes, those people are right, and it is just going to dribble away. And you mentioned Arsene Wenger there, Martin. With Wenger as well, there was always enough decent results to give you the argument to keep him. If you look at Arsenal's form over a period of years, the chart goes down the way. But if you look at it close up month to month, there's a lot of wee upticks.
He was always getting that fourth place as well. Which
he was always getting enough, always getting the result just when he needed it. Solskjaer at Man United was similar, always just picking up a result right when it was getting to critical stage and going on a wee run. And I suspect that might be where we are with Gio, that he'll do fine, but I cannot turn around and in good faith say, but yeah, when we go to Parkhead, but yeah, when we go to Aberdeen and we really need something, that they'll do it. Not totally a reflection on him. I think Martin talked about the players and their ability to do that. But yeah, at the moment, I think that you can make a case either way, but our suspicion is that when you get to the stage where you can make a case either way, it generally in football ends up going one way and not the way we want it to go.
I would agree that this isn't just a Gio thing, that it is that group. The problem is we have added a lot of numbers to that group over the last wee while, and not enough of them have established themselves as kind of squad changers, and that's a lot of that's been bad luck. Maybe it's been bad recruitment. Just a very quick point, Adam, in Gio's column, in terms of support. What I have heard a few times over the last day or two, and we've obviously heard it quite often over the last few months, that does wind me up a wee bit, that getting to the Europa League final papered over the cracks. No, it didn't. A good result papers over cracks. A good month papers over cracks. Being 2 kicks away from the greatest achievement in the club's history. The result that would surpass every other managerial achievement in 150 years is not papering over the cracks. And it's the conundrum and the paradox of football, that we're in a situation where I don't have the huge confidence that he will be able to navigate this title, whereas only a few months ago he was that close to being, having the greatest ever night. But yet it's possible to have those two competing things in your head at the same time, because cup football is very different from league football, and it's a different skill set as a manager. But I hate that being dismissed as a little freak occurrence that's clouded as it was something in and of itself that was remarkable, and it shouldn't just be dismissed in that way.
It's building your case again, isn't it? It's saying, right, well, I'm gonna talk about this because it suits what I want to talk about. I'm not going to talk about that because it doesn't. And it happens on both sides, and you're absolutely right. But see, you mentioned their cup managers. I think that's all of our suspicion, really, isn't it? And I do wonder, would anyone fall down shocked if Gio won both cups this year and not the league? I wouldn't.
No, definitely not. I think I'm the same as you guys. I don't feel as invested. I don't know whether that's the right word, but
it's exactly the right word.
I took it as a personal affront when we lost a goal under Gerrard. Never mind a point or a defeat, and maybe that was just more in terms of what we were trying to build towards with that title. However, I don't see lots to hang my hat on the pitch. That's all I'll ever really speak about in that sense. I don't see lots to hang my hat on that we're working towards a goal in terms of what we want the team to look like, how we want to play, which is obviously what I'm more interested in. But I also don't see lots that is horrendously wrong, and we're losing goals akin to what we did pre-Gerrard every time an opposition team attacks us at Ibrox. None of that happens. So there are shades of grey with everything on it. So I'm a bit conflicted. I'm probably the same as you guys. I'll be in the middle. I don't think it's going to end in unprecedented success or multiple leagues, multiple trophies, etc. But at the same time, I'm not sure it's ever going to get as bad as you need to go right now. Certainly as far as the board's concerned.
Here's a question for you both then, right? And for anyone who is kind of wondering where they are, and it's all right, but you don't need to have a definitive answer to this. Is so.
Yes, you do. You have to have your opinion early, and you can't change it. You have to say to say the Europa run was a fluke because we lost to Parkhead in February. That's how it works.
Or you have to say he took us to a Euro final. How dare you? And yeah, no, I know, I get it. But here's just a question: I'm a great believer in the voice in your back of your head is usually the one that's to listen to. The one that when you're lying in bed at 3 a.m. and you're awake, as we all were, unfortunately, on Wednesday night and Thursday, as it turned out. That wee voice is generally the one that tells you what you really think and cuts through all the conflicting ones. I remember the weekend at Tynecastle, Gerrard with his, I need to go away and think about it. And I was gutted. I was like, I can't believe this. We can't lose him. He's got to stay. Right. If Gio was sacked tomorrow, and he's not going to be, by the way, would your reaction be, oh my God, I can't believe that's so early, that's disgraceful? Or would you go, oh, well, fair enough. Well done, Gio. Thanks for your service. And let's see who the next guy is. And I suspect I would be in category 2 on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, yeah. And it's just going back to the point before about the greatest ever moment and stuff like that. Roberto Di Matteo, Chelsea. Well,
absolutely.
Were any of them? Were there with thousands of them in uproar about that because they probably by that point had accepted the future rather than clinging to the past.
I think then that probably answers a few questions, and I'd like the listeners do the 3 a.m. test, see how you feel. But we can all complain right, left, and centre. Adam, you nailed it there. It is unlikely, I think, to get. I don't think he's going to go on a big 10-game run where everything just falls to shit.
No.
I think there's always going to be evidence for you should keep him, you should go, and that's why I think this double cup thing would be. It would be so what we're going through with this at the moment, where, of course, he's won 2 cups. You can't sack him. And you're like, well, did we win the league? No. Hey, the board have got themselves in this position with this manager. It's their job to bring us out of it.
There's always going to be some sort of evidence on either side of the debate when it's never so amazing or terrible from week to week. But we can't control that. We can't control context. We can't control evidence. We can only control our own opinions, I guess. Finishing up then with what we do going forwards. If you don't mind, I would like to exclude the last 2 Champions League games from this discussion. But in terms of where we go within the next, 5-6 weeks to the Cup game plus the remaining league fixtures before we get to the World Cup, what we want to see is obviously very different to what I think we can see given the injuries that are mounting up. For me, the issues are always midfield. I've been saying that for 5 years. I'm not necessarily saying it on the back of last night's Wednesday night's game, sorry. But I would like to see some big changes in there. I would like to see Charlie McCann coming in now and getting a run of games purely for my own sanity, I think, in terms of freshness, just another player to look at and to see how someone does. I'm led to believe Alex Lowry is fairly close to at least being available for the bench. I'd like to see him getting some really regular minutes in that midfield. Lundstram hasn't been great, I don't think, this season at all. There's been a few moments that certainly at Anfield, maybe again the other night, where he's just wanting too much time in the ball. Yes, it's that level, fair enough, blah, blah, blah. I don't think he's someone that I would be taken out of the team at all, absolutely. So if I was being pretty bold about it, I wouldn't mind seeing Lundstram, Lowry and McCann at least for 2 or 3 games in this run, whether it's home games, whether it's a cup games, etc. I think just to give us a little bit of something new, something fresh, I'd be quite happy with. Take the point on Tavernier as well. David hasn't been great, still contributing in terms of assists. He's probably always going to be doing that, but probably similar to Lundstram, I think with injuries and form elsewhere, you probably still want to keep the 2 of them in to give us some sort of semblance of cohesion and leadership. Left back is a big one for me. I think I've been saying over the last few weeks, yes, Borna's played well, that's absolutely fine. However, that doesn't mean he needs to be in the team. I think how we want to play, and you can only assume because of the player that we've brought in, the style of the left back they would like to change. I think Borna limits us quite a fair bit in terms of what we want to do with the turning back, with it being so one-footed, not being able to come inside when you're playing a natural winger on the left-hand side. Yilmaz in the very, very few minutes that we've seen at the weekend, looked very, very comfortable coming in. Looked really, really good. Appreciate Borna hasn't been terrible and does this every so often and will probably come back again. But again, for me, I think now it's time to get him in there. I think those changes and then whatever we can, I don't want to say cobble together, but whatever we can come up with in the attacking third in terms of Cholak, Morelos, Sakala, even Tillman coming back in again, I think there's a semblance there of something that we can see that's decent enough and will maybe give us a little bit of excitement, maybe a little bit of hope for the future. I'll come to yourself first, Martin, on that in terms of, I'm not asking you to agree with me or anything, but just in terms of the general thoughts there. Do we think it's just going to be the same again and we're just going to go with what we have, or do we think there's maybe going to be a bit of a realisation maybe we should start to be blooding in some other players who maybe haven't had as many minutes as they could or should have?
I think there will be change. He tends to. If you think back to, Hearts at home after the first shellacking at Parkhead back in February, he tends to respond in that way. I would agree 1,000% about the left back. Blood in McCann and Lowry. Why not? It's stale. It is. We see it all the time. Both at the one time, possibly not. But I'd like to see some more from them. And yeah, if there were a few changes, there's clearly going to have to be at centre half. I wouldn't expect it to be limited to that though. He tends to throw in a wee surprise after, just to try and recharge, restart the whole thing.
He does, doesn't he, David? And I think we're saying it'll be same old. Possibly it hasn't been the case at all. We went back to two wingers at the weekend, for example, when we've maybe not done that so much in the past, and he's got some attacking intent into the team domestically. If you look at that last game in the league on Saturday as a barometer of possibly future success, that was a pretty good performance. We've done quite well. We had lots of attacking intent. So I guess it's not out with the realms of possibility that if we can somehow just ignore what happened in the midweek game, then there is a basis there in terms of good attacking football for the next few weeks, certainly domestically.
Well, yeah, I mean, see if you saw Scott Arfield's interview with RTV after the game, and I urge people to watch it. Again, if you want to be positive, he didn't look that devastated, that you might expect after a 7-1. He was quite upbeat, and I think that compartmentalisation, there you go, that Martin spoke about earlier, I think that the players have done. And I do. Now, this fills me with absolute dread for going to Naples, that, if they're just going to show up and go, oh, well, it's the Champions League, we can't do anything in it, we're going to get stuffed, then, my God, given this rampant Napoli side that are turning heads all over Europe, 10 goals in 2 games against Ajax, for example, then that fills me with dread. But it does, or it should mean that domestically they go completely different kettle of fish, lads, and it doesn't seep into the domestic game. And you're right, they did play pretty well last week and the week before. Got on the ball, made things happen, attacked well, have a very informed striker. All of those things are true. If you're Motherwell, you're going to come out and test us physically tomorrow. On Sunday, because you've got probably a King Sands partnership at the back, and that's going to. We're going to have a situation where the combined age of the centre backs is actually less than the goalkeeper, which is probably an unusual occurrence for us. But so you'll have to come through that, but you certainly should still have the ability to go on and put a performance in and get the victory. And I don't think there will be radical changes, because domestically, I think that they have put Europe into a different box. And domestically, I don't think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst feels that there will be a massive need to make enormous changes to the side. So I think that barring that and a couple for freshness, I don't think you'll see massive changes at the weekend. I think that it will be pretty much going with what you're going on. The Yilmaz thing is going to be a factor, because when we don't have much money and we spend big on someone, fans are going to want to see him in the team, right? That's just common sense, because we're going to say, well, why did we buy him then? And I get the whole he's been signed for 5 years thing, but Barisic is a player that a lot of fans, including myself, have kind of made their mind up on. Yes, mainly fine, occasionally very good, always got these kind of performances in him, and I think we're all a little bit bored with that now, of that repeating cycle. So I think that there comes a time to say we're going to put him in, and yeah, he might make a couple of mistakes early doors, but we're going to stick with this because the long-term upside is bigger. That's the problem at Rangers, isn't it? You can't do that because we always have to win every single game, and that's also the case with McCann and Lowry. But I look at the run of fixtures we've got, and certainly at home, I think, come on, are you really telling me we can't afford to play guys like that in these matches? If so, we might as well just throw the jackets in and head home. So I think we need to be careful that we don't maybe get a result on Sunday and everything's brilliant again. But I suspect that's the cycle that we're locked into at the moment, Adam. I think that we will probably win all our domestic games and probably reasonably well and playing some good stuff right up until Napoli, where I suspect we will be filleted like a fish. And then everything will be a disaster again, and then come back and the process will repeat. And maybe that's just what it is until the Champions League mercifully finishes for us this year, and we can just get to the World Cup. I think very much at this point at Rangers, it's get to the World Cup. I think there's very much an element of that, and get to the World Cup in a good position and then come back. I mean, we're told every week at press conferences, what's the after the World Cup? I mean, after the World Cup, we should have a team to rival vintage Real Madrid, the amount of players that are due back. So I think there is a strong element of that. I think we'll win on Sunday. I do. I think we'll probably go there, and it wouldn't surprise me if we actually played pretty well as well. I think the team will, come out and not be savagely effective, which you can. We've seen in Scotland, Dundee United took that awful result in Alkmaar and it done them for, at least a month. They were just completely shattered by it. That can happen. I don't think that will happen with us because I think that our players have just have boxed it off. I've said, right, well, that's just that. That will lead to problems in Naples, but domestically it should avoid that seeping in.
You mentioned being bored there, such a brutal term for describing a footballer, isn't it? Like I'm bored of what you do, but I completely understand though. I completely get it.
You don't get bored of guys who are consistent, right? No. It's just that it's this endless pattern, this sort of he's mainly fine, and let's not go over the score. He's mainly fine. He's not mainly brilliant, Barisic, right? Yeah. He's mainly serviceable. And therefore, I think that quite a lot of us in the summer thought we needed an upgrade anyway to someone who could be mainly good. But you'll get these wee spells where he is very good and he's putting in some great balls and the assists go up. And then you'll get spells fairly regularly where he is a complete and utter ghost of a footballer, like he was the other night, where his head completely goes and he's not in the game. He's Borna's one of the strangest footballers I've ever seen in my time at Ibrox, that you don't know when it's coming, but you're going to get one of the three, and you'll get a wee spell of that, and then it'll all change around again. And I just think that, again, we go back to, we spent money on somebody. It's not unreasonable for the fans who don't think you're spending enough money anyway to then go, why aren't you playing them? And if it is a case of saying, well, we need to bed them in, surely you've got to start it at some point. And I think that point is, if not Sunday, it's very close.
This is where the freshness thing creeps in, isn't it, Martin? Familiarity breeds contempt. We know what Barisic can and can't do. We know what Glenn Kamara can and can't do. We know what Scott Arfield can't do. We know what Ryan Kent can and can't do. We're not going to change our opinions on those players, but when the highs start to become less frequent and the lows or the just okays start to become more prevalent, as is the case with certainly Ryan Kent. I think obviously I've been a big fan, even up until the end of last season, contributing lots in terms of assists in Europe, but this season just looks a shadow of that again, and very, very poor. But that then, as a fan, if you've made your mind up before and then you don't see as many highs or consistent highs as before, you do start to get a bit bored of watching the same player do the same thing over and over again, especially if you're not freshening things up maybe in a way that we have done in the striker position.
Yeah, you don't become bored if things are going well. You wax lyrical about the consistency and the settled nature of the side, and we're not having to chop and change, and you could name that first 11 with your eyes closed and whatever else. So players are getting it, understandably. They're the ones out there. And I guess the frustration, Kent being the example, when we have seen some of those highs, we know what he's capable of. And we're not getting that. And the tag. Rangers don't have many £7 million players. And in Scotland, that means you are a game changer on a regular basis. That's just that's the ticket. So all these pressures that come in, there's so many factors going on, Adam. I think fans making their minds up about players, that's as old as the hills. And we because first impressions are pretty strong. I think generally speaking, we should all want to be proved wrong if we have concerns about it, but I'm not entirely convinced. I think a lot of fans genuinely want to take delight in being proved correct if they've come out and said a player or a manager or a board are bad, because in the world of social media, as football fans, we don't play the game. We can't, we have no skin in the fight. We can't actually do anything on the park, but we can be right online, and we can be hailed as a soothsayer and a visionary and whatever else. Those are the kind of wins. So I'm absolutely convinced there are fans who delight in Rangers losing, delight in players having dreadful games, just so they can say, look, I was right all those months ago. So the whole thing's tiring. Social media and football is maybe not the greatest combination at times, because it's just all consuming. But there are you said in the summer that you demand and desire freshness, and it looked like we had that. We signed quite a few players. Problem is, only one of them is really taking root for whatever reason. That's Čolak, and he's loved. He has given us something different. He is a striker, the likes of which we don't have or didn't have.
Your dogs are even, fans. They heard the name Čolak, and
it wasn't my dog, actually. I think it's over at Adam's garden or back garden next to them. My dog is.
Everybody's going to blame me and you for that, and it was not a heart and hand dog.
One of mine is fast asleep beside me. But that's the thing, Adam. There was reason for optimism. As usual, fans get a bit excited, and we project. Tillman, for example, projected his potential on him immediately, and the club from which he came, and therefore we had decided that this guy was the final article. When he's
not as much as Andy McGowan did.
He's a kid, yeah. Andy's taking that on a weekly basis. That's again that social media. So we demanded freshness. We thought we were getting it, and only one of those signings really. I mean, Ben Davies, Tom Lawrence have been very unlucky, obviously with injuries. So it is the same old faces. The faces that we decided ages ago we're kind of done with.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. That's a problem right there.
Definitely. And that comes down to recruitment. We can argue, we're very much out of time here, so we won't, but we can argue the point around we spent money on Matondo and Yilmaz. We haven't seen much from either of them for various different reasons. We needed midfield reinforcements, I think everyone seen, but the clear objective there or the priority was tying up players on 1-year deals when we probably could have done with a bit more in there. But yeah, that'll all come out in the wash, I'm sure. We'll do recruitment reviews, etc. once we get through the season, once we get past January, and we'll see how things are going with more evidence. But yeah, I think definitely a freshness is something that is required overall, never mind since this Champions League group stage scenario. So yes, never mind. Okay, that will do us for tonight. We are way over an hour, so hopefully you found this cathartic for those of you who have been listening along with us. David, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Martin.
Martin, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And I would just like to thank the producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers. If you are not signed up to Heart and Hand on Patreon, then you can do so. It's patreon.com/Heart and Hand. We'll be back over the weekend with Motherwell recap, and David will be back next week for the free show on Monday. Thanks again, and hopefully we can enjoy our weekends.